Good morning and welcome to Navigating Complexity, the podcast where we engage in conversations on life and the law, navigating the complexities of life as a business owner, a lawyer, and a person, trying to bring a little humanity to the practice of law and maybe even learn something new. Today, we have a very special guest, Karissa Rivera. She is a local attorney who specializes in trademarks. I am your host, Danielle Dudai. Karissa, welcome to Navigating Complexity.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited to have you here. I'm really, really excited that you are our first official guest.
Thank you. And I just want to commend you on, giving attorneys and women in the legal field platforms to speak about their experiences and humanizing us. So I'm very proud of you.
Oh,
And
thank
I'm
you.
very excited to see how much your podcast blows up. This is going to be awesome.
Have you ever done a podcast before?
I've done kind of like a panel, but not like a sit down. We're in a padded room and there's cameras on us. No, I've never done something like this.
Okay, well, then we have about the same level of experience. But you know what I always say? Lack of experience does not mean lack of competence. So let's get started with why you became a lawyer.
I enjoy being the person that provides an answer and problem solving. And so growing up, my parents had their own business. And I always thought, and I come from a group of friends and family that are all creatives and entrepreneurs. And so I always thought, I want these people to be protected. I wanted them to feel like they could navigate their, passions and dream businesses and not feel like they're getting undercut or, signing agreements that they don't understand. And so that initiated, the spark of maybe I can be an attorney and help my friends and families like grow the businesses that they want to grow. And it naturally evolved into me eventually growing my own business. So that was my introduction to law.
That's really awesome. How would you describe what you do now as an attorney to a non-lawyer?
What I do now is I help brands, creatives build and protect their brands. What that means is what a consumer sees when they first see your company or your product or your advertising, that initial impression, it's something that can't be reproduced. It's something that instills confidence or trust in a certain service provider, and making sure that that's protected is just the first step to eventually expanding a business and scaling a business. And so really, you know, if I had to explain to somebody, it's making sure that your branding is protected so that you can grow and evolve along with your brand.
You mentioned that your parents had businesses and did marketing. Is that what led you to pick this type of law, or is there something else that drew you to that?
Yeah, I would say so. I think because I had that creative inkling to want to, do something that's explorative and kind of like outside of the box and creative, for lack of better terms, but also not. I didn't want to sit behind a desk. I didn't want to, you know, have something that's so structured and boring. I wanted to really weave in the creativity that I was ingrained in me.
Okay.
And so that allows me, what I do now allows me to also have, that creative backing.
And so the type of area that you practice in, I mentioned trademarks. We call it generally intellectual property, right? And so is there anything else in your practice that you do outside of trademarks? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your practice?
Yeah. So I focus on intellectual property. I'm on track for certification in Florida, which is great. There's not that many intellectual property certified attorneys, nonetheless women. So I'm super excited to be going on that journey. What I do entails of protecting branding. So that's trademark. So any logos, brand names, slogans, phrases for your business, that's what's protected by trademarks. Also copyright. So for a lot of creatives, that's, this podcast, any like linguistic or artistic productions, those are all protected. So like content, films, music, that's all copyrightable. So I help people, navigate protecting those assets, and also, monetizing them. And then there's other type of IP like trade secrets. So what makes a business special, kind of like the secret sauce recipe,
Sure.
things like that. That's all intellectual property that I handle.
Yeah, in fact, you're doing some intellectual property for us, right? At dudai.legal.
Yes.
Yeah. And what did you tell me I needed to do?
You need to trademark, girl.
So, dudai.legal, our slogan is navigating complexity, delivering results. And a wise woman told me that I should definitely trademark and protect that because that is part of the branding of my business. And it really is the essence of what I do. But in its own way, you're doing the same thing for your clients. Tell us a little bit about your career path. What was your early career like after you left law school?
So during law school, I think everyone has a different experience in law school. You know, some people are in every club and every organization, some people volunteer. I was working at a medium to big size law firm when I was in law school. And so um, going into law school, I thought what I wanted was big law. I thought what I wanted was, you know, to make my way up through a big law firm and become a partner and all those things that a lot of attorneys aspire and achieve. But once I was living that culture, I realized that wasn't what I wanted. And so out of law school, I started working at a boutique law firm, and I liked that environment much better. I feel like there's a lot more opportunity for collaborative working and it's more interpersonal. You get more client face time. And so I like those things. And then eventually I I am where I am now, and I started my solo practice, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
So let's talk a little bit about your solo practice. How did you come to open your own law firm?
I was put between a rock and a hard place. I'm just kidding.
You can tell the truth. I mean, to the extent that we've all been through things in life, right? I have 15 years of stories. But I think it's important for people who are listening to know about challenges that we face. You as an attorney, you as an associate that turned herself into her own managing attorney, I think that can be a very inspiring story. So certainly, I think sharing the experience of the challenges that you faced that brought you to opening your own firm are important. And I think it's important for any business owner because you and I both serve business owners of all ranges and industries. And many of them face this hurdle of like what to do next. Should I take the business partner on? Do I
Mm-hmm.
take the money from an investor? And then what is the implication of that? So I think the decision that you made to start your own law firm, leaving a job that you were at for several years and you didn't know any differently, is a huge risk, but also very commendable. So
Thank you.
tell us about it.
So I think I was just in a place where the value I was providing wasn't being appreciated or reciprocated. I wanted to treat clients, I wanted to provide clients white glove service. And so the kind of clients that I wanted to serve, the kind of services I wanted to provide, I feel like the position I was in, I didn't have the flexibility or even the ability to do that. Or maybe I did, but I didn't feel like a part of me was like, this is something that maybe I can't provide in this space or in the environment that I was in. And I'm sure that had I had I done what I'm doing now for myself at the firm I was at, maybe I would have blown up. Maybe I would have, spearheaded the IP unit. Um, but the reality is that I had a thought, what if I do this on my own? Like what if I get my own clients? What if I brand myself? What if I bet on myself? And I just took the leap of faith. I don't have a mortgage, I don't have a marriage, I don't have kids, I don't have liabilities hanging over my head that are like I need to be working a 9 to 5 that I'm not necessarily feeling fulfilled at every day. And so, if not now, then when? And I had, an amazing support system and mentors like you and my family to support me. And so I just took the leap of faith and thank God it's been working out. But I forgot what the question was, but that's where I'm at.
Great. I think that you answered the question really well. It was about tell us about your firm and how you chose to open a solo practice. But at some point, you left law school, you joined a law firm, right? And That was the only firm you were at before you opened your solo practice?
Yeah, a post law school. Because I worked at a big law firm during law school, but it was doing workers compensation and insurance defense, and I knew that I don't want to offend anybody that's in those areas of law, but I didn't want to be paper pushing. Like I was working under partners that had been working there for 7, 10, 12 years, and they still weren't seeing the recognition that they desired or the titles that they desired. And so I looked at that and I was like, do I want to invest all these years to an organization or to myself?
Yeah, working in big law can be tough. For those who are watching or listening that don't know what big law is, it is the phrase that we use to describe bigger law firms, more commercialized running versus what we call boutique or smaller, more concierge style law firms. And it can be tough. And I've worked in big law, and it is definitely a different game. It's an entirely different game, different playing field because you have a lot more requirements and there's a lot more pressure and there is a much more structured hierarchy. So it can be
Mm-hmm.
tough to allow your own creativity and identity to flourish in that kind of settings,
Yeah.
especially early on, because many big law practices, you're not eligible to become a partner until 6, 7, 8 years in. And that's a long time if you have a lot of goals and ideas like you do. So, what is the most valuable thing that you learned as an associate, and how has that impacted the way you run your business today?
The most valuable thing I learned as an associate, well, in my last position, I served as an associate for 3 partners. And so I felt like juggling as much work as I was, juggling as many tasks and clients and expectations as I was, um, and looking to my partners for validation and always receiving, confirmation that what I was doing was correct and being validated on my actions, it instilled in me, that self-validation and self-assurement that I needed to now doing these things on my own. No, I'm on the right track. I've juggled work for 3 partners before. I can juggle work for one attorney myself. I can juggle work for my firm and having a solo practice. So I think just knowing that I can take on more than I think I can chew and that I'm capable. And that's how I navigate my business now.
So, what do you think that you learned working for 3 partners at the same time in terms of like the challenges that that can present? And what's the takeaway? Did you learn to excel in time management or communication skills, or what type of thing do you immediately think about was the best learning experience from working for 3 attorneys at the same time?
I think the best learning experience working for 3 partners at once was that everyone has their own style, their own communication style, their own, communication style internally and also towards clients, their own writing styles. And so being mutable and malleable to different expectations and different styles led me to creating my own style, the knowing what I like and what I don't like from each partner and kind of pulling from those experiences and those work styles to create my own style. And I really appreciate those experiences because it's evolved into, something that I can be proud of and um I know when to something I can be proud of. We can just wrap it up with that.
So, actually, you and I met working at the same law firm, and at some point, I became your supervising attorney. So, this is not a question about what I taught you,
Mm-hmm.
but it can be. It's more of a question of thinking onto that experience. What do you think the best piece of advice that you can give to other associates climbing the ladder, whether they're going to ultimately open their own firm or work at another firm or just trying to get to partner status, having worked with 3 partners, including me, what do you think was the best thing that you learned that if you had continued on that associate to partner track would have helped give you that boost? So for me, the best piece of advice that I got when I worked in big law was from my managing attorney. And she told me that billing is an art, right? Billing, the art of capturing your time, it's an art. And I didn't really get what she was talking about because I had had my own practice for a few years before working with her and I knew what I was doing, right? Or I thought I did. And then I realized how much time I was leaving on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really taught me how to capture my time, how to make sure that I am capturing the value I'm giving clients. And that is something that is still with me today, all these years later. So for me, my best piece of advice to young attorneys, young associates is be mindful of the fact that you can always learn something new. And especially in civil law, where you're doing billing, really pay attention to all the things you're doing and write it down as you go. Entering your time the same day is so important because you will lose so much of your time. There's statistics to go to that. I don't have them handy, but I do know them. And that is something that I always share with other attorneys. And I'm always willing to be available to other solos or attorneys who are like, I feel like I'm losing time. What am I doing potentially wrong here? Do you have any advice? And I do it all the time because I've learned and trained my brain now for several years. So do you have anything like that that you can share with attorneys of what's a great tip that you learned that you still carry with yourself today?
Yes. You taught me this. It's about the value that you're providing to clients. So whether that's, working off the clock to learn the area of law or a specific case so that you can provide actual value to your client. I think it's a lot to think, okay, I'm charging X amount for this, or because I don't have a structure to follow, I'm building that structure. Like, it's like a balancing act. What's the value of what I'm providing, but also what kind of value is the client receiving? And I always want to make sure that they're receiving as much value as possible. So I would definitely say that's the largest the biggest lesson I've taken away is like providing value to the client.
Yeah, and I agree with you. That's something that I've always told other attorneys that I supervise or mentor is the value you're providing to the client. Like, is this work product worth what you're charging for it? Because legal fees, legal services are very expensive. Not specifically speaking about either one of us, but just in general. And most people don't have, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 like laying around for a rainy day when they need a lawyer. So it does impact people who need it. But in doing that, that's a key thing. Every attorney should be looking at how they're providing value. That's a pillar of the principles at my firm, is doing that at all times. And I think that's something that I love about running my own firm. I love that I have the flexibility to manage my life, but also make sure that everything I'm billing my clients is really reflecting the value they're receiving.
Yeah.
And I'm very upfront about the costs of those things. But in doing that, clients are also explained exactly what they can expect. And it helps set expectations, which is a struggle that I've faced in terms of what is a problem that I have or have had with clients in the past. And what have I learned from that is setting expectations and having those clear, just like very clear discussions early on to the point where I'm almost blunt about it.
Yeah.
And there's no sugarcoating. And I'll tell you exactly how expensive it's going to be and what the paths are that I see that could protect you or help navigate that particular issue in a more cost-effective way. But I'm never going to sugarcoat it and tell them that it won't cost that much because I don't know that to be the case. I know the opposite to be the case. So for you, now having your own firm and having the direct relationship with clients, what do you find to be a area of difficulty in working with clients?
What do you think is an area of difficulty?
It's definitely like expectation setting and communication. I'm very clear when I hire or a client hires me that, which actually it's also I'm hiring the client because I have to determine if that's a client that I want.
Yeah.
Because I live by the whole idea that not all money is good money. So, that may offend certain people, but I am not in this business to make money. I'm in this business to help people. So as much as you're hiring me to do the work, I'm hiring you too. So setting client expectations from the outset of a relationship is very important. Telling them about the communication policy. Yes, I am very accessible because I pick and choose my clients, but that doesn't mean that you have full access to me 24 hours a day. You don't get to call me at 7:30 and expect that I'm going to sit there and work on it. Now, if you want that to happen, there's an expedited rate or an irregular hours rate that gets imposed. And most people don't want to pay that. And so that also helps set those boundaries. But I think expectation setting is a big one. And in my experience across the last 15 years, I see that that can be a struggle for a lot of attorneys. There's not that communication up front. I think there is a fear, especially among smaller practices, like not even just solos, but just smaller law firms,
Mm-hmm.
that they're afraid to lose the business. And so they're not going to be upfront about some of those things right away because they want to sign the client.
Yeah.
And I do think that that can be problematic, and that leads to everyone being unhappy, right? Because if the client's unhappy, then you're unhappy, and then you're going to fight over the bill, and it becomes a whole thing.
Yeah. I think when you're setting those expectations clearly up front and you're completely transparent with your client about what to expect, even if it's, a range of costs or a range of time, it gives the client, it kind of puts the ball in the client's court. It's like, okay, now what are you going to do with this information? Because I think one of my issues is maybe clients not being responsive. And then it's when we're up against a deadline, or, we need something to get done, or maybe to them, it's like, okay, we need to put this fire out, but it's really not an emergency. It's just that you waited so long to communicate what you needed, or you didn't get back to me on this. And so I think that's something that that I'm learning to navigate now with the clients that I have, is how to deal with maybe difficult clients or unresponsive clients, and knowing when to fire a client. Because like you said, we're also hiring the client. So thank God we are in a position where we get to select who we want to work with and for. And so knowing when to fire a client is also something that I'm learning. I haven't had the opportunity to fire a client, but I might be firing one very soon.
That's actually one of my questions is, have you ever had to fire a client? And so I'm glad that you're setting those boundaries, because I have had to fire clients. And those experiences, especially early on in my practice, helped me shape these communication policies that I have, helped to explain to clients those expectations, right, up front. I've had clients that would call me on the weekend. I remember a few years ago, I had a client call me on my birthday. It happened to be a Sunday, and it had been a holiday weekend. And this client had been shooting off fireworks in his backyard, and I guess they damaged a car in his condo association. He called me 17 times in a row, sent me text messages, emails, and I was like, "What is going on?"
Is he calling to wish me happy birthday?
I answer the phone on the 18th call. What is going on? Oh my goodness, my neighbor, they're going to call the police, blah, blah, blah. Okay, are the police there? Yes. Are you getting arrested? No. Okay, then it's not a problem for me on my birthday, respectfully. Okay, the world is not ending. And this client had the audacity to tell me, "I pay for you. You're mine. You do what I say. You're my lawyer. This is what I'm paying you for." I'm like, "Actually, it's not what you're paying me for. But I'm going to tuck this away as a little note in my head to make sure that moving forward, every client knows exactly what they're hiring me for." And of course, my contract for representation, when clients have to sign it to hire me, it's long and it's very detailed. And it's gotten to be that long because of these types of experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So I have had to fire clients, but I've also fired clients there's been times like that where it's more animated, a little more toxic of a situation.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's been times where we're not on the same page, and, the client can't wrap their head around timelines. So it's just not the right fit, even if it seemed like it would be. And those are very amicable, but I'm not afraid to draw those lines, and I'm not going to spread myself thin just because someone else has an emergency in their own mind.
Yeah.
Respectfully, your emergency is not my emergency unless you pay me to make it your emergency. And that may not be something that a lot of people will say out loud or that clients want to hear, but it's the truth. I'm not a robot. I'm a person. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I have a world outside the law office doors. And if you expect me to answer the phone and work for you at 6, 7, 8 p.m., that means I'm not spending time with my husband and my kid. If I'm working for you around the clock and you're not compensating for me giving up that time, that means I'm not having a life outside of my work, and my work is not my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that tends to be a pervasive trend in the firing of clients is the respect of those boundaries. So what is your favorite thing about your practice?
My favorite thing about my practice is just the industry that I'm in, the kind of clients that I work with, the personalities that I work with, and being able to weave in creativity and kind of artistic expression in the type of work that I'm doing, because what I'm protecting is branding, and trademarking is a very subjective process. So being able to not only work with funky clients, but also, protect their funky creations, I think it's so much fun. Um, and just overall, I love learning and reading. And so to find my niche and that area of law that, I can just get lost in is super rewarding. So I'm glad that I was able to find a practice area that really like feeds me the way that I and fulfills me the way that I need it to.
That's phenomenal, because they say that if you do what you love, then you're never going to work a day in your life, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's great because you've found a way to take being a lawyer and make it fun for you, right? Because most people don't think of lawyers as fun. I don't think that's a common set of words in the same sentence, but it's true. And, for me, other than the life balance that I get from having my own practice, I love solving problems. I am a big puzzle fan. Like, I love a good puzzle. And that's what I do, right? Like, navigating these issues, figuring out what particular issues a client could face in their particular set of facts, whatever it is, that is so exciting for me. I get revved up about it. And to that end, if there's areas that I'm not familiar with because I haven't done it before, I'm not intimately familiar with it, I spend my own time researching it because, again, I want to provide value to the client, but I'm also excited about this new area that I have an opportunity to explore. So for me, it's a win-win, and I feel the same way. Do you have a favorite memory about your career? I know that it's early in your career, but do you have a favorite memory?
I think there was a turning point in our relationship where, because we have such similar learning styles and working styles, I don't want to say we butted heads, but I think there was miscommunication at one point about, I was very early.
Absolutely there was.
I was very early in my career when we met, and we were working together, and it was very new. And I was used to a different type of working style as well with the other attorneys I was working with. And so I think there was a turning point in our relationship where it was like, oh my God, we're kind of like the same person sometimes. And we work the same way, we communicate the same way, we research the same way. And I was like, it was like a switch flipped. And I just like, it's kind of like now I saw like friendship blossom and like mentorship blossom and trust and love. And I was like, that's like, it was such an amazing thing because I hadn't found that in somebody.
Oh, well, now I'm going to cry. Okay, so we were talking about the mentorship and sort of the relationship. You and I worked together, and there was a turning point because when we first started working together, there were definitely communication issues. And I think in part it's due to both of us, right? On your end, not having done that type of work before in litigation, and then me having the understanding that you did know what was going on, and your communication at the time with the other partners was not in the same way with me. So you didn't ask questions as freely. I think it was more of a situation where instead of asking questions ahead of time or as you went, you would wait until the end to ask all the questions, which in litigation can cause problems in terms of duplicating work, right? Yeah. And especially with litigation where you have deadlines, it can be problematic. But for me, I learned from that experience too, right? I learned that I can't just assume that when someone says they have experience doing something, that it's the same type of experience that I have, right? Because there is a big difference in our experience levels. I've been doing this 15 years now. So what I've had the exposure to is significantly different than you. And like I said at the beginning of the show, lack of experience is not lack of competence, but that experience taught me how to navigate relationships with anyone that I'm working with on any type of case. Because even though I am a true solo and I'm just a one-woman show, much like you, I do have co-counsel that I work with on more complex cases. So I definitely understand and appreciate that. And I'm glad that you find value in that and that our relationship did blossom that way, because I see what you're doing. Like, you started a law firm, and yes, sort of all of the elements in your life in terms of not having these big responsibilities to worry about okay, those are out of the picture. So you can take that risk, but it's still a huge risk, and that can't be understated. There is a level of fear, I think, that especially women have in business across all industries, that if you fail, that people are just going to see you as a failure and they're not going to see that that's just an isolated moment in time.
Yeah.
Right. So it can be very scary. You're establishing who you are as an attorney in the community. You're figuring out your identity within your law firm as a person, all these things. And it can be overwhelming. And it is necessary to have someone that you can ask questions to, be vulnerable with, and not worry about the judgment that can come from that. And I didn't have that when I started my firm in 2019. And it was really hard. And I really think that it was a bigger roadblock than I realized it would be, because even though I was fortunate enough to be successful from the start date of the firm, I had to keep an area of practice that I didn't love because it's what was bringing in the cash to support the firm's growth in the civil market. And it really took me a while to establish myself and navigate certain things that I hadn't had experience with because I didn't have anyone to call. Now I have, one of my best friends, Valerie Barnhart, you know her well, and it's a safe place for me to ask her questions even now. Hey, don't think I'm stupid for this, but I don't know if I'm looking at this the same way. She has a beautiful way of putting it. She'll call me and be like, I need the brain trust, right? Like I just want to bounce ideas off each other. But that's really important. And I think something that gets lost in business generally is the idea that there's not room at the top for everyone, because there is. And I genuinely know that me pushing someone else down does not lift me higher. It doesn't help me get ahead to push someone else down.
Yeah.
But helping you grow, that also helps me grow in many ways, right? And I know that a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So we're going to get to the top together, and there's plenty of room at the top. Valerie and I have very similar businesses, and other people would look at us as competitors, and we have no competition in our relationship. We work on cases together. She just referred me like 3 clients in the last month, and so I think that underscores the point of there's room at the top for everyone. So if there is an opportunity to help a younger attorney out and like give them guidance so that they can shortcut past some of the pitfalls that I went through.
Yeah.
And some of the advertising options that I looked at, which at the time I thought were really creative, but didn't pan out at all and actually potentially attracted the wrong type of clients. So I'm really glad that that's your favorite memory. I have a lot of favorite memories, but I think the ones that jump out are really the relationships that I formed. I love the relationship that you and I have. You're like my little sister in all of this. And I never had a sister, so I got one. And the relationship I have with Valerie and other friends, like my friend Cullen, we're different people, but we found a way, despite our very alpha personalities, to manage cases together. And it's so much fun to work with another person, but also have your own independence and having your own firm. And so I think that's great. And I'm excited to see what the rest of your career is going to look like. It's going to be big. I know that.
Thank you.
So going from the sunny side of things, I know that there are a lot of times in the practice of law, especially as a woman, you can face harassment or bullying or condescension, things like that, just like negative things. Are there any sort of toxic experiences or scary experiences that you've had as a lawyer? And if yes, what did that teach you in terms of navigating through life after that?
Thankfully, I haven't had any scary experiences, but I can only imagine, the plethora of women that have, because this is a male-dominated industry. And so that's scary to even think about, that women have to deal with that kind of stuff. But I think what I've experienced the most being a woman in this industry and also being a young woman is being doubted, my abilities being doubted, or maybe what I know, what I've experienced being doubted. And so, I don't walk into a room claiming to know everything or know the most. I actually, the opposite. I walk into a room wanting to absorb as much information from everyone, knowing that I'm not the smartest person in the room. And, I never want to be the smartest person in the room. but it actually like it fuels me to, have, these grown men, you know, um, doubt my abilities, and then being able to come back and be their opposing counsels on cases, and, you know, just proving it to myself and surprising myself that I'm capable of these things, but also knowing that I am capable of these things and that I don't have to prove it to anybody, but it is like a little reward
Oh, it's
when
definitely
you do.
nice.
Yeah. What have been your experiences?
Oh, girl, I have so many. Um, Unfortunately, I have so many. I started my career as a prosecutor, and unfortunately, the office that I came up through, there were a couple of girls that felt like pushing me down was going to help them get ahead. And I dealt with some really toxic, really negative things, and it made my job that much harder. And the more that I went through my career and I elevated and I became more specialized, I started to work on really scary cases. And there was one case in particular where the defendant, the person charged with the crime, had tried to have the victim in his case murdered multiple times. One of those times he successfully had her shot. And shortly after that, I started getting death threats as well. And so I had to be under constant surveillance. I was checking in with police. It was a whole thing. It's like in the news, there's articles about it. And that case lasted a really long time. And so that was a scary thing. And to this day, I'm just hyper alert wherever I go. But I've also dealt with sexism and, the shift in the dynamic of power between men in positions of authority above me, whether they're partners or supervisors, and I'm, let's say, a junior partner or just a line prosecutor or whatever it is. And it's hard to navigate that because you don't really know what your options are and you don't know what the ramifications are. Thankfully, like there were never any serious like physical boundaries crossed, but it definitely shaped me as an advocate that has become like hyper aware of those types of things and making sure to consider that other people's experiences may be similar and maybe that's why they're reacting the way that they are or they're not, but also making sure that I remain on high alert and I'm not afraid to maintain boundaries,
Hmm.
and it's tough. It's certainly tough. One of the things that I really found very disappointing in my career is that other women are not supportive and can be very, very negative and actually keep you down. And that's just not who I am. So having worked with women who do that to me in terms of trying to block my promotions or my growth, and then working in big law with partners who, even though I was a partner in those firms, right, they're still treating me like I'm not the same.
Hmm.
And I remember one case in particular at a firm where the attorney, I mean, we're not even that far apart in age, and she was treating me like I was a brand new associate out of law school, and it was that was not the game to play with me. But it was just a reminder to me not to be like that.
Yeah.
And so really all of those experiences helped shape me into being a more empathetic advocate and also making sure that when there are opportunities to mention people like you in the room, I do it, because again, it's not going to hurt me. A lot of those opportunities are not even for me. I don't specialize in trademarks, right? I don't do that transactional side. I handle the litigation side, which actually is really fun because you handle intellectual property matters for my clients. And when they turn into litigation, we get to work together on that,
Hmm.
and you get the exposure to an area that you haven't done in terms of the litigation. And I get to learn trademarks.
Yeah. And I think we have to be in those rooms with the people that look down on us or doubt us so that we know the type of attorneys that we want to be and the type of attorneys that we don't want to be. So I think those big law moments or those moments where we're, at firms that don't serve us help us develop, the solo practices that we have now and that we're developing every day.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more about this practice that you're developing. What What are the top 3 things that you think anyone, lawyers, non-lawyers, potential clients, need to understand about the importance of trademarking your brand?
The top three things that I would recommend to any business entrepreneur is that one, when you have a trademark or when you trademark your brand, you get to say this is mine. Not only because you're using it, but because you have a formal registration, you have a formal certificate with a gold stamp on it that says, this is something that belongs to my business. And that directly translates into an asset for your business. So the value of your business goes up. Now, somebody comes along and wants to, buy that trademark off of you. You have a registration that you can sell. Somebody wants to buy your business. You get to up the value of your business because you have trademarks. Those are additional assets that belong to your business. And also being able to weed out competitors and dilution and potential confusion in the market. When you have a trademark, you're able to let competitors know that this is how you brand yourself. This is how a consumer is seeing you in the market. And if they do cross a line that, potentially may confuse a consumer into believing that you guys are associated or that, you do business together, you have, there's rights that you're afforded and there's actions that you can take to protect those assets to your business and really, distinguish yourself from competitors. I think those are the three main points about trademarks that I think are, the most valuable things to know.
Right. So it sounds like the top 3 things that you should know about trademarks is that it becomes an asset, an actual asset for you and your business. Number 2, it brings added value by having that asset to your business. And 3, it helps you identify your market and understand how consumers are seeing you.
Yeah.
Because I imagine that you have people who, once they get through this process, they're like, well, that's not the only market I want. I want a broader market. Or maybe I don't want as broad of a market. I want to narrow it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to talk about, because you went from, working for the state to working at big law firms to being a solo to working at boutique law firms to being a solo. But it's like something is pulling you towards being a solo. Like it always comes back to you developing your own business and your own client base and that liberty. What is it that keeps drawing you to being a solo? And do you think that this is the last time you're going to be a solo? Like this is, or do you see yourself ever joining another firm? Like where do you see your practice going from here?
It's such a funny question because I'm absolutely not joining another firm. There's so many reasons why. Valerie and I actually joke about this because she has a similar experience. And we talk about we're just like dating because we work together. We're never going to get married. Like that's just never going to happen.
Sometimes that's better.
It's not because we don't work well together, because we do, but there's a lot of autonomy that you get in working for yourself. And it's not just in the hours that I work and that I don't have to report to someone else, but it truly is in the value I get to bring clients because I don't have to worry about the overhead of anyone else or the expectations or the profit sharing or anything of anybody else. So I don't have to worry about hitting a certain revenue goal to justify my space in a firm and my salary or whatever, setup it is. I can focus on the clients. And there has always been a certain level of value and service I want to bring. I became a lawyer because I want to help people. And I've seen throughout the years, whether it's my parents or friends, just to go to lawyers that they get forgotten about. I mean, just yesterday, a good friend of my family called me to say that he needed help in a certain manner. And he had hired a lawyer a few years ago to deal with it. And he had been told it was handled and it was not handled. And it's a pretty significant issue. So I want to be the kind of attorney who says what they mean, means what they say. And when I say that I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And it's going to get done for you. And I pride myself in making sure that clients have never been misled. But for me, I love the ability to work for myself, but have that ability to date, right? And work with you, with Valerie, with Cullen in these ways that allows me to learn from other lawyers and potentially navigate areas that I haven't done before, but I'm not afraid to do it, no, period. But also I'm not afraid to do it because I have a teammate to help navigate through that. So you mentioned the value that comes with a registered trademark, right? And a registered trademark is when you actually do the paperwork and you submit it to the trademark board and you get that, certification and you get to use that little R in the circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're hoping for that for me real soon.
Look at it.
But do you have to register your logo or your phrase to have any rights to it?
No, you don't. So the inception of trademark rights comes from its use in commerce. So use in the market, whether that's selling on a local basis or selling interstate out of the country, but actually using your mark, for a business. Um, the thing with that is those are called common law trademark rights. Those are geographic in scope. So if I'm navigating, I'm operating a business in Florida and we use this logo, I have protections limited to where I conduct business. So within, Florida or within South Florida, in some cases, maybe even in my county. Um, and I can prevent people from, potentially prevent people from, in the same locality from using a similar mark as mine or design or logo. But I won't be able to prevent somebody from a different state or, from a different country or in a different industry from using a mark that looks or sounds like mine. So while registration does give you much broader, um, richer rights, you do get rights by using your mark in commerce, and they're called common law rights. Um, the scary thing with that is though, if you don't have a clearance, so where you are, whether it's you independently or getting with an IP attorney to, make sure that you're not infringing on anybody's rights, by using a mark that looks like theirs, or maybe they have a registration, you're exposing yourself to potential liability, infringement liability. And especially if that person has a registered mark, they can, bring a federal lawsuit against you to enforce their rights. So I always encourage business owners and my clients to start using their mark, but that's after, a clearance has been conducted. And if they want to register, we can register. If not, then they can continue to use their rights and preserve their rights on a local level. But there's always that risk that somebody gets a registration or somebody has a registration that, prevents them from continuing their use. And as we know, like a lot of clients, once they're invested on their brand, having to tell a client that they need to rebrand or, XYZ is a hard conversation to have, but it's a necessary one. So I think definitely making sure that there's a clearance done and starting to use your mark is essential to before any registration happens.
So we live in this world now where AI is pervasive, right?
Yeah.
And everybody has ChatGPT on speed dial. So why should someone hire you as a lawyer to do the trademark application when they could just do it themselves?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I encourage clients to check out the system because thankfully the US Patent and Trademark Office, the USPTO, they make the trademark process very understandable. It's very user friendly. A business owner can go in and, file their own trademark application. They can read the rules themselves. Um, I have had clients that have filed the applications themselves and kind of just wait around for the registration certificate to hit their email and it never does. And that's because maybe there was issues with their applications that they weren't aware of, or maybe they received an office action. So that's a refusal of their registration. And so while I encourage clients to run their own clearances and file their own applications, it definitely saves you time and money. And it's going to be a more accurate, consistent process if you work with an IP attorney to get this stuff done. And in the long term, it might end up costing more to have to fix errors in the applications that could have been avoided had you worked with an attorney on the onset. As for AI, there's definitely I'm sure there's programs, and maybe ChatGPT can help you prepare your class descriptions for your application. So that's the goods and services that you file under based on your business or the industry that you operate in. But there's a personalized touch when you work with an attorney, that they're understanding the purpose of your business, the audience that you want to reach, the type of protections that you want and what really matters to you. And you don't get that when you're working with AI. And
For sure not.
and use AI. I'm a fan of using it responsibly and knowing that it's something that needs to be proofread and reviewed, and it's not the end all be all. Like I'm all for this rise in using technology to our benefit and to not reinvent the wheel, but also knowing that it's prone to errors and it's imperfect, and so is a human, but we have the capability to learn from our mistakes and evolve on a much more personalized and richer, I think, level than AI.
AI also doesn't have an ethical center like we do. And as
Absolutely.
attorneys, we have an oath of attorney that we take, which is similar in concept to doctors, right? So AI is going to be looking to make you happy, right? And find a way
Mm-hmm.
for them to give you the answer you're looking for versus actually doing the work and being impartial where need to be or objective. I try to incorporate AI into my practice to help clients benefit from maybe an accelerated path
Mm-hmm.
forward, but I find that it has a lot of issues. I gave it the other day a rule set, the Florida Rules of Civil Procedure, and I asked it to create deadline charts so that my legal assistant could have something handy. And it totally messed up the rule on summary judgment. And I had to ask it twice. And I actually copied the rule and I said, this is what the rule said. These are the wrong dates. And it's like, oh, you're right. I know I'm right. I'm glad I didn't rely on you. But there are
Yeah.
so many people that rely on AI that don't realize the gaps and the holes. And I think that that is really important. And I think that what you're saying, it rings true to what I do as well, right? There is a lot of value in investing in an attorney to help you get it done right the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you work now to prevent these small concerns from turning into big problems, you save yourself so much money. I know that we know that for some of my clients who
Yeah.
are going through it in terms of needing to like pivot in their branding or dealing with, corrections that need to be made. I know that working with an attorney for IP is really important because it also is something that you look at in terms of how are we protecting this asset, right? We don't want it to be in your name individually because we want to protect it from any potential lawsuits, right? You want to protect your assets to the maximum level, but you can't just throw it in any random LLC because you also have to observe formalities. And all of those are conversations that you have with a lawyer when you're consulting with them on protecting that brand. And there's definitely a lot of cost that people can get leery of. And I know that people are always looking for the best way to do something that's the most affordable, but those don't always go together.
Yeah.
So I think there's a saying that like you can have fast, good, and cheap, but you can only have two of the three of those things,
Yeah.
right? And I very much feel that way when I talk to clients. I tell potential clients and now actual clients, I am looking to prevent these issues from becoming big problems because if we have to go to a lawsuit, it's going to cost you $100,000 in a year easy.
Yeah.
It's just think about spending $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, even $10,000 now,
Yeah.
or you're going to spend $100,000 plus in a lawsuit.
That's that preventative law that I think we both practice, and that's consistent amongst both of our practices, and that if you're not going to pay now, you're going to pay later, and later it's going to be with interest.
Oh, yeah. One of the cases that I have, it's been going on for 3 years and the clients are about $500,000 in fees. And I don't even have a trial date. So that's the type of thing that you have to be concerned about. And, I know we had a client of mine that we worked on the matter about a year ago, and it was an acquisition and a purchase agreement. And he was very salty about the fees that were being charged because in his own mind, he had set a budget that he did not communicate to us.
Mm-hmm.
But the day that deal closed, the seller violated it. And had we not done the work that we did, and had I not insisted on all of the documents that we did, because he's trying to do some like 2-page chicken scratch on a piece of paper. That's enough. It's good enough. He would have had to spend easy $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in a lawsuit to try to get the assets he already paid for. So, and even though those contracts include attorney's fees provisions, like getting through a lawsuit takes years. It's not quick.
Yeah.
So I think that we're winding down, and there are a handful of questions that I have left for you. But I think I'd like to know, what would other lawyers be surprised to know about you?
I'm a break dancer. I'm just kidding. What would other lawyers be surprised to know about me? I was class clown. I won class clown superlative in high school. And I think that's when I peaked. That's when my life peaked. I'm just kidding. No, I won class clown superlative in high school, and I think I carry that with me for the rest of my life. Like, I just want to make people laugh. Like, I make my clients laugh. I make strangers laugh. And it just brings me so much joy. And so I don't think, because like you said, when you think of attorneys, you think of like these robots that are just like, we're pressing buttons on a computer and we're billing you, but we're people and we have personalities and we have lives, and it's not always just about our jobs.
Right. You're not just a black jacket,
Yeah.
right? There's so much more to you.
So I think when I speak to some attorneys or clients, and I'm goofy and myself and I'm like a person, they're kind of taken aback and they're like, okay, well, we can have a normal conversation. Like, this is crazy. So that's what I'd say. What about you?
Oh. What would people find surprising about me? I am trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I can choke you out if you mess with me, especially if you're wearing a suit jacket. You'll make it very easy. So stay in line. But I think that actually highlights an important point. We are different types of lawyers. We're not stuffy, right? We're not buttoned up and stiff, but there's still a line. You don't share everything in your personal life. And I think even if you want to communicate with clients in a certain way because it is more casual and comfortable, there's a line that you don't cross, because at the end of the day, you still are a separate person. They don't need to know everything about you. I also operate from a place that, like, not everyone needs to know everything about you. You don't have to share everything. I'm very much not of the culture of live streaming my life. Like, I keep my personal life pretty private, but I do think that there is a level of humanity that you want to bring to your relationship with your clients, so that they don't feel like nervous to talk to you or uncomfortable to reach out. They hired you to help them navigate an issue. They should feel comfortable reaching out. But let's not make it so comfortable they're trying to come over and hang out on your couch.
Yeah, no, of course. It also brings this sense of warmth and reliance in referring clients to you too, because it's like, hey, this is a person that just so happened to help me solve a problem, and they're easy to work with, easy to talk to, and I like being that type of attorney. But I definitely never want to cross any professional or ethical lines to make a joke. I would never do that intentionally. Just kidding.
We've talked a lot about your identity and the shaping of the practice that you have now. In 10 years from now, where do you see yourself professionally?
Okay, good thing you didn't say personally, because I would have said the Maldives. Professionally, I see myself having, a national brand, probably mentoring law students that want to explore IP, mentoring young professionals and other attorneys that want to have a solo practice. And I think what I would love is to have like an impressive book of just clients that I've helped protect their brands on a nationwide and worldwide level. And also being known for, being a passionate IP attorney. So like I said before, I'm on track for certification, and that excites me so much because I want to be able to tell my clients that I'm certified. I want to be able to be hired as an expert in the field and say that this is my specialty. Even though I can't legally say that now, I navigate my business and I every day like if it is my specialty, because what I'm the most proud of to know and what I'm the most passionate to learn about. But that's where I see myself in 10 years, certified with an amazing book of clients that I've helped become, nationally and globally known brands, and mentoring youth to also develop their own brands.
That's
Where
awesome.
do you see yourself in 10 years? Besides with a farm.
I'm going to live on a farm in somewhere isolated where no one can find me, and I'm just going to rest finally. Um, I haven't thought about it in a long time. My brother used to ask me this question, and he would say, in 10 years, what is the story you want to tell your children? And he's been asked, like, every time I had kind of a big life decision to make, where should I go? Should I go to this firm? Should I continue to work in government? Where should I live? Because when I was in law school, I actually looked at moving to Illinois to work in Chicago. And it's a question that's always stuck with me. 10 years from now, I do hope to be in a similar path that I'm on now. I want to continue to help people every day, growing their business, preventing issues from turning into big things. I have a handful of clients where I'm their general counsel, and I just have so much fun working with them throughout navigating all parts of that business and the growth models. And it's really exciting and fun. But I also really like litigation. And I know there are so many people that will say, you're crazy. But I really do enjoy it because it's a big puzzle to me and I know the rules really well. So it's kind of like a board game and I enjoy it. I hope to maintain the boundaries that I've set for myself now, where I only keep a handful of cases in litigation. I have more transactional work and I continue to do that. I don't want to have, I'm licensed in Texas, but I'm not trying to have a national presence. I'm trying to have a presence in Florida and a presence in Texas, but I'm not trying to be a big law firm because I still want to be able to give my clients a certain level of attention. And in what I do, it's really hard to do that if you have too much litigation or too many large transactions, because I do handle transactions of significance. I've handled multi-million-dollar transactions on my own, and there's a lot of paperwork involved in that. And so if you're trying to be everything to everyone, you can't really do that. And I think I hope to be well on my way to retirement 10 years from now. I am definitely not trying to be working until I'm dead. So that's where I see myself. Last question. What does navigating complexity mean to you as a business owner, an attorney, and a person who's just trying to balance life and work and find balance?
I love that question. I think so. Navigating complexity to me means making the most of every situation, learning that, things that don't go the way that we plan is a lesson, and in many cases a blessing, because it's, redirecting us to the direction that we're supposed to be going. Mistakes are opportunities to learn and to grow, and that it's okay to be human and to be imperfect. That's a complexity that I navigate every day. So, and that's what that means to me. What does navigating complexity mean to you?
Well, for my firm, it means delivering results. But for me personally, it means trying to find that. I mean, we use the word balance, but realistically in this profession, it's very hard to find true work-life balance. But I'm trying to make sure that I am delivering on the promises that I've made to clients, the representations that I've made in terms of the things I can achieve for them, while also maintaining my boundaries and keeping space for myself to be a mom, to be a wife, to build a life and not just work to live, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have something that I'm not excited about in terms of my working. I want to have joy. I want to be excited about what I'm doing. And anytime I've had something in the recent past where it's not bringing me joy, I make a note to wrap that up. Or if it's going to be something that's prolonged and there's an opportunity to terminate that relationship, I will. Because life is too short. It is. And even if, I'm 41, even if I've got 40, 50, 60 years left on this planet, it's still too short to be doing anything that makes you unhappy.
Yep.
Just there's too many opportunities for the opposite side of that, And so navigating complexity is just about maintaining that clear-headedness about how I'm going to be as an advocate, as a guide for my clients, but also how I'm going to get through being a wife and a mom and making sure the groceries are picked up and my kid's going to his extracurriculars and all of those things, and keeping time for myself and not losing myself in all of it.
Yeah, very true.
Karissa, thank you so much for being here today. It was so phenomenal to hear about your life, your story. You've been so honest and candid with us, and it could not have been anything better than what it was today. So thank you for joining us and sharing what navigating complexity means and helping shed a little light on who you are as a person and an attorney and bring a little humanity to the practice of law. And I think we all learned something new today about intellectual property and about you. So again, thanks for being here. Conversations like this is why we started this podcast. This podcast can be found on all of the platforms where you get your podcasts, like Spotify, Apple, and we also will upload this on our YouTube channel. If you want to learn more about me, I can be found at www.dudai.legal, and all of our socials will be tagged in the captions below. Thank you so much for being here. I am Danielle Dudai, and this has been a Dudai Legal Production.